178 years ago this week, a steamboat attempted to navigate the Red River from Louisiana to a port near Hugo, Oklahoma. On board were provisions for soldiers at Fort Towson, but most ended up in the muddy water. Today, there's a growing exhibit at the Oklahoma History Center that chronicles the short life of the Steamboat Heroine, plying the rivers of the Wild West that was Oklahoma in the early 19th century.
On May 6, 1838, the Steamboat Heroine was navigating the low waters of the Red River when it struck a log.
This boat was on the river, it sank, and then within a couple of years, the course of the river changed and it was buried under tens of feet of soil. So it was in a largely anaerobic environment, no oxygen.
Which meant in the early 1990s, when another flood uncovered the wreckage, most of the bottom half of the boat was still intact. Dan Provo is director of the Oklahoma History Center and director of the project to recover the Heroine.
The deck, the lower hold, some of the machinery, that was all still there. Although from when it was uncovered in the mid and late 90s, the river currents were very destructive.
It took 2 years to coordinate with Texas A&M University to begin a recovery effort, making the Heroine the oldest archeologically recorded vessel of its type and Oklahoma's only documented shipwreck. Today, there is a growing display at the Oklahoma History Center that tells the 6-year life story of the Steamboat Heroine.
We still have pieces in conservation vats at Texas A&M right now. Just because of the size and the thickness, the density of the wood takes a longer time for the preservative to infiltrate all the way through and preserve it.
Eventually, those pieces will be brought to Oklahoma to join the display.
Over the course of the next several months, we're going to be adding a crane on the front bow section of the boat that will discuss and describe and illustrate how they loaded and unloaded materials. We've got cant hooks, which are special hooks that were forged at the time to go under the lips of barrels to lift the barrels up and down.
Plans for expansion of the exhibit include interactive computer systems that explain more about the boat and the people who worked or traveled on it.
Next fall is we're having a full-scale model built of the boat itself. It'll be closed on one side, open in different sections. So it'll be a scale model. It'll be about 8 feet long, but it'll show the boat on the river.
Already on display, artifacts recovered from the wreckage, including shoes and other personal items of the passengers, who all escaped the wreck, by the way. Even some of the cargo was recovered.
The contents of the barrels, the pork barrels, were recovered too. And there is a gentleman who's interested in studying the DNA of those pigs and has taken samples from the bones to conduct a DNA analysis.
A lockbox was also found, still intact, but it failed to survive long outside of its oxygen-free environment. It contained nails, an important commodity when hundreds of miles from civilization.
So you can see evidence of breaks and repairs and how they did that. You can also see where the fittings don't fit real tightly around the axle. And again, what they were doing is that they would be wedging, we uncovered several hundred pieces of stone, of wood, of chunks of metal, of nails, of all kinds of things that they would wedge in, trying to keep the axle in place, trying to keep it in balance, trying to reduce the noise, which must have been horrific.
Despite the noise and the segregated housing, the well-to-do were on top, the regular people on the deck with those who were paying for their passage by working the boat. The steamboat was still a major factor in early 1800s transportation.
Things that, again, surprises people is how much river traffic there was and for how long. These go back into the middle 18 teens in terms of some of the very first steamboats coming up the western rivers. And the impact of steamboats across the West.
At the exhibit at the History Center, there are models of the steam engine and its dual paddle wheels to show how the boat was actually powered. There's another model that shows to scale just how much of the Heroine was found in the river. The Heroine is a big boat, over 140 feet long and nearly 30 feet wide. Because there simply is no place to put it all and preserve it, and there is no money for what that would cost, Most of the boat is still covered by silt at the bottom of the Red River near Hugo. There are some wooden parts like the rudder that are still in preservation tanks at Texas A&M University. Dan Provo says the rest of the boat is fairly well preserved for the moment in the oxygen-free environment at the bottom of the Red River. Until finances and space become available, that will be where this big piece of Oklahoma history will remain.